Okay, so yeah, this is the EV panel. So for anybody who's interested in getting involved with the electric vehicle movement, thanks for coming. We're going to have hopefully 4 panelists. We've got 3 of them here now. And the idea is that they will tell you their stories, tell you what they've learned about EVs, the pluses, and maybe if there are any minuses or difficulties, but it's mostly pluses. And then we'll have plenty of time to do a Q&A if there are questions. So let me just bring out my description of what we are asking for. And yeah, so I would like, if you have a chance, and you will, I would like each of you to discuss how you got involved with EVs and which kind of EVs you've been exposed to, owned, and just general advice about things to think about for people who might be interested in moving from gas powered to electric vehicles. And I think I'll just, we'll just go from, what is it, stage left to stage right.
Okay, thank you very much. Lee Morgan, Annandale, the proud owner of a 2019 Bolt. My wife and I went through a frenzy of trying to reduce our carbon footprint. We did 3 things. So the economics all screwed up. We insulated our house, put on 24 solar panels, and bought an electric car. We did it in such a way that I can't tell you definitively the economic impact. However, our automotive expense is down about $2,000 a year, which is, I'd be interested to hear what other people have to say. The reason for the Bolt was that we live in Annandale, a town of about 3,500 people near St. Cloud, Minnesota. And the only Chevy dealer in town was a Bolt dealer. There were no Bolts in St. Cloud, and we had friends who wanted electric cars, and they bought Bolts, and they had to come to Annandale. So we would have been terribly humiliated if we hadn't bought a Bolt in Annandale. I wanted to buy a Tesla. My wife said she wasn't willing to pay for the T, the S, the E, the L, and the A. And she felt a little too ostentatious for Annandale. So we ended up with the Bolt. We absolutely love it. Range anxiety is real. Twice I've had, 3 times serious problems. And I will tell you why, because when you get your electric car, you're going to be in this situation sooner or later. I was at a Sustainable Farmers Association meeting in northern Minnesota, drove there in my Bolt, got lost. And 2 things happen when you get lost. You drive faster and you drive further. So the result was, by the time I finally got there, I had very little range. I didn't have enough to get home. Had a friend there in a Tesla. So the deal was, I was going to follow him at 50 miles an hour all the way back to St. Cloud. And if I ran out of juice, he would carry me the rest of the way. Well, as soon as I started driving 50 miles an hour, my range started going up. I was stunned. So we got to St. Cloud safe. I said, I'm fine. I can make it the last 25 miles home. By the time I got home, the car was triaging itself. It wouldn't go very fast. None of the electrical stuff was working. We've got the fancy version. Heated steering wheel, heated seats, all that stuff turns off. But I got home with a little bit juice to spare, probably driving 35 miles an hour. So I was quite relieved. The second time, drove to the airport, parked it, came home. The airport parking lot is off-site. The car was covered in ice. And defrosting an electric car is a special problem. If you turn on the car to defrost it, you're sucking the range out of your car terribly, which we did. And so we're heading home, and my wife is speculating about which hotel we're going to stay in and where we're going to do. It's going to be a disaster. And again, the car triaged itself. We were cold as all get out, but we got home with a few miles to spare. So I was relieved. When I came here, I wouldn't have come, except Pete encouraged me. Peter said, well, you'll have charge here. So I was doing great when I left home. And then the damn temperature started to drop and the wind started to blow and my mileage went down. How many miles per kilowatt? But I got here with about 30 miles to spare. Peter's charging me up now, so I'm feeling confident and good. The other thing I would say about our Bolt is we live in Annandale. We're about 25 miles from St. Cloud and about 60 miles from Minneapolis. So all of our driving is in a very small radius. But I confess, we are a 3-car family. I have an English sports car, which is really a toy. V8, terrible, undoes all the virtue of the Bolt. Have a old Honda van, which we take when we want to exceed the range of the Bolt, and then we have the Bolt. And I did check, the Bolt has now 53,000 miles. So we've driven it hard, and I love it. I can't recommend it highly enough. We're just waiting for them to come out with the next version that has assisted cruise control, which it didn't have in the one we got. So I love bells and whistles. So that's my story.
Thank you, Lee. Phil Engen, Cedar Rapids, Iowa. So I'm gonna have 3 points to leave you with that I'll elaborate on. One is, as you think about it yourself, as you're talking to other people, number one is make the decision today that you're done with gas cars. You'll never buy another gas car. You will only buy electric cars, and you'll be so happy that you did. So there's electric car owners hardly ever go back. All right. Number two, speaking a little bit to Lee's point, you can go anywhere in North America in an electric car with a few caveats. If it's a Tesla. Item number three.
Ran with the Bolt, he traded in and bought a Tesla because they wanted to drive to the West Coast.
Yeah, I'll elaborate. But and the number three, the cheapest car to own today is the Chevy Bolt. The second cheapest car to own today is the Tesla Model 3 standard range. So, okay, elaboration a little bit. One, you'll never go back to a gas car because you never go to a gas station again. And you think about the time you spend going to a gas station, the hassle of, oh, I'm almost at a gas station. You can leave your house every morning with a full tank. And it just, you come home, you plug it in, you unplug it, you drive away. You do that once every day, and it's fantastic. The convenience of that is unimaginable to a gas car owner. The never taking your car to the dealership, taking the shuttle to work, and then getting the shuttle to pick you up to take you back to the dealership so you can get your oil changed goes away. You never get another oil change. You never take your car to the dealership again. It's just maintenance free. It's fantastic. You have to add windshield wiper fluid, and you have to buy new windshield wiper blades, and you have to buy tires. The total cost of ownership is ridiculous. You can, after the tax credit, thanks to the IRA, you can buy a new Tesla Model 3 for under $33,000. You can go and buy a new Toyota Camry for $32,000. So they are almost the same price, like $1,000. And that's not the all bells and whistles Camry, mind you. That's the baseline Camry. If you want to get some bells and whistles, well, forget it. Camry's one. And I say Camry because it's a very popular car. Everybody knows what a Camry is, and it's the same size as a Model 3, so it's a fair comparison. And what you don't spend on fuel, maintenance, and the longevity. You have a car with an engine with one moving part. It's not, that'll go for 1 million miles. The car will rust out, even though it's made of half aluminum, before you have a mechanical failure on your engine. And the batteries last a long, long time. You can go anywhere in the country. I've owned my model. Speaking to what I have, I made the decision to go all electric around 2016, 2017, somewhere in there. And I had 3 gas vehicles. And in 2020, the derecho came through Iowa and Nebraska. It kind of wiped out Cedar Rapids, damaged every building, took out 2/3 of our tree cover, and it squashed my VW Bug. And so it's like, oh, well, okay, time to buy a new car. So the only thing I looked at was electrics, and I bought a Nissan Leaf, and I love it. It's great. It has 80, 90 mile range, never really leaves town or like a neighboring city. It's fantastic. I've spent nothing on it. And so the money I've saved on fuel alone, not even counting maintenance, in the 3 years I've had it, has paid for about 1/3 of the car already. Question?
Just one minute left.
Oh, okay, I see it. All right, sure. And I bought my Model Y a 1.5 years ago. In the first year, I drove 40,000 miles. I've been to every corner of the continent and never once had an issue with range anxiety, because it's like you punch in your destination, and it tells you when to stop and for how long. And that's it. Simple, it's the simplest transition. In a few years, that situation hopefully will change and you can buy any car and it'll be that simple. But today, if you want to do road trips, it's a Tesla. But any electric car you buy is going to be a huge improvement over the gas car that you were used to.
I'm Erika Gilsdorf, and I went to an EV expo in my hometown of Detroit Lakes and learned about EVs. And I always thought an EV was out of my price range. It's for wealthy people, it's for people that live on the West Coast. And I learned that it is within our reach. So then I made it a personal mission. I'm a video producer to do a story. So I started What Fuels You, an electric road trip. And in 2019, we drove a Chevy Bolt EV around Minnesota to show that you can get anywhere you want to. And then in 2020, I was sponsored by Mitsubishi and drove around the entire US, pulling a tiny house with the Mitsubishi Outlander, because at that time, the infrastructure wasn't quite there yet to do anywhere I needed to go. I was visiting a lot of wildlife refuges, doing that kind of storyline too. And so that was kind of a bridge car. And then I got sponsored by Volkswagen and drove the Volkswagen ID4, all EV. And I drove that. They sponsored me to drive through the heartland to show driving in Colorado, in Utah, in snow, up mountains, down mountains. And then I just bought a Tesla for myself. So I drive the Tesla 3 and Model 3. And I had more range anxiety with the Mitsubishi Outlander just because it was both, and I was pulling something really heavy and it's not designed for that. But the biggest question I have is, so most of my EV driving has been long distance, and I hear a lot of people say, well, I buy a car for my short distance and then I have a gas for my long distance, and that doesn't apply anymore. I've driven all over the US. I have zero fear that I can get, and obviously, yeah, like I just went to Mackinac Island and I couldn't go straight across, so I had to drop down a little bit and hit another EV charger. But the biggest things I get is, well, do you have range anxiety? And I'm like, no, because you map it out. Well, it takes a lot of time. No, because like you were saying, it maps it out for you. There's no anxiety because it's like, oh, charge 10 minutes or 15 minutes. Well, sometimes I go 25 minutes because I'm like, I just want a little extra, comfort level. So, and then in the winter, well, how does it last in the winter? I have yet to figure that out because I've always parked the car in a garage. So, I think that's the question that I would have. Have you driven it in the winter? And do you just keep it plugged in? I mean, but on the street, not in a garage. Yeah.
So I was driving my sister's Model 3 in a couple years ago, Christmas, Northern Canada, and it was minus 35 below. And I got to my mother-in-law's house and I plugged it into a regular wall outlet just when I got there because, well, just to get something going, because we came in pretty low. It got too cold to charge. The amount of amperage you could pull out of that 110 outlet wasn't enough to warm the battery and charge it. And that's the only charging option I had there. Then in the morning, we arrived there late at night. In the morning, we put the car in the garage, plugged it in, and it was fine. So with a 6 kilowatt charger, your standard level 2, it would have been fine because it would have had enough power to warm the battery and charge. But out of a 110, which is ridiculously low power, no.
Yeah, so that's the biggest thing that I'm going to experiment with this winter. But I just love it. I don't have range anxiety. I think it's great. And also the EV community is really supportive. I have friends that I'm like, hey, I'm having this problem. Like, oh, just press this button and this, or hey, do this. So the EV really wants you to get in it. And it's true. Once you get into an EV, you don't want to get out. And I get a lot of people wanting to say, well, what about the batteries and what about this and what about that and what kind of miles and kilowatts? And I just tell people, I am not going to regurgitate facts. I can't retain those facts. I drive an EV because I like being a part of the transition to clean energy. And that's it. And I like it. It's comfortable. And I'm part of the change. And yes, it has a long way to go with recycling batteries and with changing different things. But I want to be part of that change. So that's why I'm an EV driver.
Well, I don't know where to start. I'm a new EV driver. I bought my Tesla in January. I bought it used from a gentleman in Scottsbluff, Nebraska, which is 200 miles from my home. And I had a little range anxiety that first time because I didn't trust the car and trust the software. I trust the software now. It's pretty good, but it'll surprise me every now and then. Like you go over a mountain pass, it doesn't take account the elevation change. So going up a big mountain pass, it drops quite a bit. So I went down and bought it from this gentleman who is 4 years old, just off warranty, so he wanted to get a new one. And he was an IT professional. That's what he does for a business. And he said, "This is not a car. This is a software package with a car wrapped around it." I don't know if you guys experienced that. Mine's an S, and it's a 2018, about 8,000 miles on it. But I found that part of the car a little more challenging than I anticipated. I'm 74 now, and the menu on this screen for this car is about that long, and there's probably 10, 12 different screens on there. So each of those has a subscreen. So anything you want to do with that car, my car, involves going to the screen and doing it over there. And there's tactile issues and there's software issues. Every now and then it'll say, "I'm going to reboot," and then I'm sitting there for a while. So that was an adjustment that I had to make. It's glad to make it, though. It's not insurmountable, but it's different. This car is different than gas cars. Range anxiety, I still have a little bit. I had a little bit coming up here because I turned into the wind and my range dropped. I didn't trust the car, so I slowed down and made it fine. So is the EV car good for you? For me, it was, because I'm retired. I don't do long trips, but it works for long trips. I drive mostly around Rapid City or within 50 miles. And I plug it into 110 because I'm not in a big hurry usually. I'll plug it in at night, and if it takes 2 days, it takes 2 days. Big deal. If I need to get a charge, I'll go down to the fast charger and pump it up. But what else does it do? It is, you guys heard of what's called the Tesla grin? It's the grin you see on these guys. Driving this car is just a kick in the pants. I love it. If I had this car when I was 18, I'd be dead now, because this particular car is really got a lot of acceleration. What they say about it is true. You have to hang on if you're gonna jump on it. You gotta hang on and be prepared for it. Curve's great. It's really smooth. Quiet, of course. It's everything's powered by electricity, so everything you do, it takes electricity, it takes out of the battery. But it's just different, and I wouldn't go back to a gas car. What I still say about it. Planning for a trip.
Can each of you say what range you have on your Teslas, which battery you have?
Mine's 300.
Mine is used, and I think it's at 235 or 250 now.
Mine came out of the factory with a 330-mile nominal range. I easily get 300, no problem. As Lee said, it's really speed dependent. You can get 1,000 miles if you drive 30 miles an hour. You know, so but the range is really where the chargers are.
Oh, I understand that personally.
Yeah, mine offends me by adjusting the range to my driving style. I have a very heavy foot. So if my wife drives it, the range goes up. If I drive it, it goes down. In the summertime, it's about 250. In the wintertime, it goes down as low as 175.
Your wife, your marriage and my marriage are polar opposites.
I don't know if that's good or bad.
I don't either.
One other thing that I learned after I got the car was Tesla recommends, the car new said 300 miles, the new SSR 400, I think. But they say that's 0 to 100, and that's driving under certain conditions. That doesn't include wind or cold or how they recommend that you use the battery. They advise that you don't go typically on an average go over 80% or go under 20%. So that's you only working with 60% of the battery. And for me, that's between 150 and 200 miles. So the range advertising is it's not deceptive, but it's not the whole story. So when I came up here, I go about 150 miles at a pop, which is a couple hours, which is for me, it's time to get out and walk anyway.
There's one thing, what is that? Do you know the name of that app? Just a minute. Oh, yeah, so we've been talking about wind and rise and stuff, but a better route planner is an app that you can enter your Tesla, your car, your Bolt, and then you can do you can enter, I'm gonna go over a mountain pass, it's this cold, I'm gonna have wind. So the car will take the previous, like I get a lot more range if I go slower, like just drive the speed limit. But anyway, there are apps that also help you with gauging all the elements to know how you're gonna get to your destination. A better route.
A better route planner, ABRP.
Yeah.
Great app. PlugShare is another good app that tells you where charges are of all different kinds. One comment that was made by Alan here about the battery type. My Model 3 has a lithium iron phosphate battery. There's no cobalt in it, and it is to be charged to 100% as often as possible. Yeah, and so then you get 100 to 10. You should try to keep it above 10 and keep some buffer there.
But that's pretty unique.
That is kind of unique. You can't get that in the United States right now because the battery's made in China. But I got it like the first quarter of this year when it was available.
Some time for Q&A too. Yeah, so I wanted to quickly say one thing. I realize we don't have anybody that has a plug-in hybrid, right? Oh, what do you drive? Oh, okay, but we haven't talked about a plug-in hybrid. One of the points I want to make for everybody is there's an electric car for everyone. And if you have range anxiety, you can go with a plug-in hybrid, and there are many choices for plug-in hybrids too. And so we should highlight that. So yes.
I'd love to make a comment about that.
Very good. Yes. Okay.
Okay, sure. I like the 1% stage there. I drive an Outlander, and I bought it for similar reasons. I want to be able to tow small stuff. I went to a car show one time for EVs, towing my sailboat with the Outlander, just proof of concept. But it's a plug-in hybrid, which means that I can push a button and it goes pure electric until it has to go to gas. And my current range is 25 maybe during the fall. But I plug in and I tell people that's enough for me to drive to my morning coffee, come home, drive to my noon, whatever I forgot to do, come home, then go to my evening committee meeting and come home, all on battery. I look at the panel and it tells me that of the 21,000 miles that I put on it, 93% of those were pure battery. So I'm effectively driving a Tesla, but I didn't have to pay the price.
Well, I drove a plug-in hybrid for the whole year.
Very, very good.
Yeah.
I just thought that, okay, anyway, I'm glad to have that information out there, that there's that option too. And the last thing I want to say is, and you alluded to this a little bit too, the whole thing is changing as we speak. Every year for electric vehicles is very different from the last year. So at any point, if you look at the choice to buy an electric and you say, doesn't quite look like I want to do it, you should check again a year later, because it's going to be even more advantageous the next year. So things are happening very fast in that space. Yeah, are there questions? Or I'm happy to have comments, but maybe we should allow for a question. Yes?
Yeah, I guess so I have a plug-in hybrid, and I'm not at a point in life where I can afford to own my own home, and I was looking at apartments and having a plug-in hybrid, wanting somewhere to plug it in. A lot of apartments have surface parking or on-street parking that does not have a place to plug your car in. I found a place with a garage, but I was wondering if anyone here who has owned a plug-in or full electric vehicle, if you've ever been in a situation where you were renting, and if you found that challenging at all.
So I want to actually address that. I have not been in that situation myself, but I do belong to a car club that recognizes this as a tremendous challenge. So I wanted this to be about the ups and downs. And that is one of the things that is absolutely a difficulty. If you live in Minneapolis and you are connected to this car club, they actually have support to try to convince your landlord to upgrade, and what the most efficient, money-wise way is to do that. But that is one of the things that is going to be changing as more people get electrified transportation. I don't have much more to say than that, other than it's a recognized problem, and at some point we're going to move away from it. Anybody have other comments about this? Yes, okay, thank you.
So my son has the Model 3 and he lives in a high-rise apartment downtown Cedar Rapids. There's no charging on site. And so he goes to a public charger maybe once a week and charges it to full. He has the lithium iron phosphate, so he can get to full. That gives him 270 miles of range, and that's good for the week.
That's also what I do.
And you have a plug-in hybrid?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's not going to be probably what you want to do, although you could find a local charger.
A lot of plug-in hybrids are only compatible with the level 1 chargers.
With
So
up to they're almost all level 2.
mine, I think, is level 1. Some of the newer ones are also compatible with level 2, but sometimes that's also a higher trim option.
Okay, this is news to me. Are you really sure? Because,
I can double check.
yeah, okay. Well, let's move on. Yeah.
All right, thank you very much. I just want to say I own a company that sells chargers. So, and we've done this since 2014. So we sell charge point, free wire, wall box, you name it, in our what do you call it? EV Save. But anyway, to the socket. The cars come with a socket that's a J1772, which is, a single phase supply or split phase 240 volt. But what I wanted to say about my partner in Chicago has a Chevy Volt, and what we did there was put an inductive charger on from a company called Ibertron. Unfortunately, they no longer exist, but it was very convenient because we could have that inductive coil.
Was it hard on the battery?
No, but you do lose about 7 to 8% in the transmission of, or the induction between the coil in the car and the coil on the ground.
If you were in a parking lot or parking ramp for an apartment building, we'd have to plug it in somewhere.
Yeah, that would be a different scenario. It depends again if the apartment building is condo or it's rental. Because if it's a condo, then you have deeded lots, deeded parking lots.
Do you have a plug near where you would park? I don't know whether it's inside or outside, but near where you would park, you have an actual plug.
Because I found a place with a garage, I do have just a normal house outlet, and that serves my daily needs. I did just look it up, and you're right that it is also compatible with the level 2. I was wrong.
Level 2 or level 1, and so you can then just use your portable charger in your garage. Oh, okay, they'll let you do that. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, but this is interesting. Yeah, you can do inductive charging. I wasn't aware of that for these.
It's quite convenient because you don't have to have a cable, right? You just drive in. It's like going to an airport and see a little LED display in front of you. And the closer you get to the point, the more it blinks. And then when it's solid, that means now you're parked right above. And that's it. And the car starts charging by itself.
I have a feeling that's where we're all going. So that's one of those things that will probably change for everybody over time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We're also involved with inductive charging in the road system. And in Los Angeles, we're working on that. And the idea is, of course, that you can drive on the road and get charged at the same time. And,
Yeah, very
a
good.
little bit into the future, okay?
Got it. Yes. Yeah,
My question is, how many miles, how many thousands of miles can you go before you have to get a different battery?
1 million,
1 million miles,
2 million for my son's car.
is that right?
Mine is probably 600,000.
Okay,
Well, could you explain those numbers a little? I'm sorry, I hear numbers. They're very different from each other. Are they pulled out of a hat or are they meaning?
Kind of what they're.
I just asked, I heard 2 million, 1 million, 600,000. I'm noticing that these are very different numbers from each other. I'm wondering if they're defensible or estimates or what.
Peter's got a comment over here, I think they're. Thank you. Yeah.
My answer is yes, Bill.
Well, your answer might be different than mine too.
So just one piece of data, I got my first car, a Tesla S in 2013 and drove it 210,000 miles before I sold it in 8 years. And I lost about 15% of the battery range. Most of the time, what the batteries do is they just kind of fade. They fade a little bit more at first and then maybe 1% per year. So that then is, you know, it could get down to 10% of its original charge. And if you were just driving like Bruce does, you would still have no problem. But the numbers I think that Phil was quoting is what the design limit, the plans, would that be true? They're not really necessarily rated for that, but that's what their design goal is. The federal government mandates that all EV powertrains are warranted for 120,000 miles and 8 years, I think. So you've got that, but the general experience out there, and you can find some graphs, is this slow fade that, you know, within reason doesn't really impact your driving unless you really need that full charge all the time that you started with.
So my car came out of the factory with a 330-mile range and a battery that has 2,000 cycles kind of rated. It'll fade, it'll go longer, but it'll be fading and then get to the point where it's like, well, why? Right? Why do you want to drive it? My son's car has a 250-mile effective range and 8,000 cycles on that lithium iron phosphate battery. It's a different chemistry, so it has more cycles. So that's 2 million.
Cycles you mean charging cycles.
Full cycles. So a half a cycle is half a cycle.
I do get this question a lot when I show cars, and my answer is that we will find out. I mean, there's a lot of predictions, but it is new. So we are going to find out how great these cars are as we move forward, and particularly how long the batteries last. And I think people are going to be surprised at the positive effect of it. And anyway, if you have to buy a new battery, that's cheaper than buying a whole new car. So it'll be okay. I want to, yeah, so I want to go to the back.
Thank you. I don't own an electric car. I wanted to buy one like 2021, I want to say, and it was out of my price range. I didn't have the economic force to buy an electric car, so I got a gas one. But my going forward, I'm looking into it, but since money would be always a problem, I have to be concerned about that I'm buying. I would like to know from your guys' experience, what are some downfalls or concerns related to owning an electric vehicle? Any concerns at all? And if there are, how do you resolve them? And we have 3 minutes left.
Yes, we only have a couple of minutes. We have a little bit addressed that, and I was very happy that you pointed out that there are sometimes range issues. I want to say the price aspect of this, things have changed to the point now where it would be for most people advantageous to switch to an electric vehicle. You might pay a tiny bit more in car payments, but you're going to save huge on gasoline. And that's been my experience, even with a plug-in hybrid. You said 2,000 a year. Lee said
Insurance and everything, by the way.
oh, yeah, just, okay. And I would say I have saved about $1,000 a year with my driving habits. And so over 10 years, that's a 10,000 drop in the price of the car. So, and the nice thing about car payments is they stop. And the bad thing about gas payments is they continue. So that's my talking point here. So really the concern about price is probably misplaced already and getting more misplaced every year. And then there's the range anxiety and towing. I would say that is another thing that for some people is a big issue. If you tow a boat frequently, probably you're gonna have some range anxiety, but I'll let other people comment on what they have to say about the minuses, which are few.
Concerning, I don't know if I have any minuses. Cost is certainly one of them, but my car cost, I think, 110 new Type S in 18, and I bought it after 4 years for 50. So if you would like to get into one I used, EV, I think is a lot more reasonable, and they do have a long service life, so there's a lot left in it after that. And then another quick comment. As being an engineer, I try to figure out, compare the cost to drive on electricity versus the cost to drive on gasoline. I don't know if I got it right, but for a 35 mile per hour or per gallon gasoline car versus my charging from my home in non-peak rates off the grid, it's about 1/5 or 1/6 the cost for energy. And I have solar panels on my roof, so when I plug into that, it's not free because I could sell that power to the utility for a whopping 1.9 cents. So it's about 10% of the cost of driving a gas vehicle.
Really quick, very good.
Downsides. A tree fell on my car in August on my Tesla, and there's one authorized repair shop in Iowa. So it had to be towed to Des Moines and had to be fixed there. So it's a transition, it's a new thing. That's a downside. Okay, it's fair. Long distance travel, supercharging is more expensive, way more expensive than charging at home. So you're not going to see the fuel savings on long distance travel that you do on local travel.
Thank you. Yeah, if it's really, really quick, because we're kind of out of time. Yes.
Again, just on the affordability part of this, one option that I found really compelling a few years after I got my car was electric bikes. If you think of having, a lot of people do need to kind of like, get a cheaper option for a car. Sometimes that means you need to spend $10,000 on a car that's, like 8 years old, has a lot of miles on it. And if you think like a plug-in hybrid vehicle allows you to travel electric locally and then gas when you need to go further away, having a cheaper gas vehicle and an electric bike accomplishes basically the same thing. Sometimes it can be cheaper. I personally know somebody who got an electric bike on sale for $500, and then all of your local travel is electric, or sometimes it can be significantly cheaper than getting a full electric vehicle.
Yeah, thank you. So this has been great, and I really appreciate the comments and everything about this. We have a break now, and so there's plenty of time to talk more to our panelists about their experiences. And I guess with that, let's thank our panel. Thank you very much.